So Dr. Mark Smith is an environmental professor at Auburn University's College of Forestry, Wildlife and Environment, and a wildlife extension specialist with the Alabama Cooperative Extension System. His work focuses on human-wildlife conflict and invasive species management with expertise in feral hogs or wild pig or feral swine, ecology, damage mitigation, and stakeholder engagement. Through research and outreach, Dr. Smith works with landowners, resource professionals, and communities to better understand the ecological, economic, and social dimensions of wild pig impacts across the southeastern United States. His applied research helps inform practical, science-based management strategies and policy decisions related to wild pig control. So thank you so much, Dr. Smith, for being here, and sorry for the technical difficulties, but hopefully everything else goes without a hitch, and I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, hey, no problem at all, Kayla. I understand how this stuff goes. But thank you so much for the invite to come here and talk about wild pigs. This is a topic I've been working in for about 20 years now here at Auburn and working with a lot of partners throughout the country. And I also see several folks here, several of my colleagues here as well from other parts of the Southeast that are patching in. So I'm going to jump right into it. I have about 18 hours of information that I have to get done in about 40 minutes. So this is going to go kind of fast. I will warn you in advance. I'm going to touch on the tip of the iceberg a lot of different things. And my goal really at the end of the 40 minutes is to give everybody a good idea of what's going on with the pig world. Okay, these invasive animals, the damages that they do, the management that we conduct, and some of the nuances relative to wild pig management, because it is a big issue. And I hope to frame that all up for you in 40 minutes. And of course, we'll leave plenty of time here at the end for questions as well, as I know you may have some. So let's just jump right into it and make sure we're all on the same wavelength here. In the scientific community, the research community, we call them wild pigs. That's Scrofa. Okay, you'll hear them referred to as feral hogs, feral swine, wild boar, Arkansas razorbacks, Eurasian wild boar, Russian boar, all sorts of names for this animal. But they are surprisingly Scrofa, same species, same stuff that you'll buy at the supermarket. We like the term wild pig in the research realm because it does cover those that were formerly domestic, that are escaped, or any true lineages that came across the ocean. Okay. If you look at their distribution, as you can see in here in the green range, that's their native range. In the United States, they are non-native, as well as Australia, parts of Argentina as well. Japan is another place where I've done a little bit of work with pigs where they are non-native species. Okay, so they do have their native range as well as their non-native range. And here in the United States, or I should say North America, they are non-native species. Okay, but they are all Scrofa, okay, under that same genus species. And that's important to understand too, because you'll get so many folks that, wow, we got Arkansas razorbacks, this is a different pig. No, it's the same pig. A pig is pig and pig. Now we've got the 57 Heinz 57 mutts, and a lot of them are, but over here they're Scrofa. Now, don't confuse that with what's not a wild pig, the collared peccary. This is a native animal here in the Southwest and then through Central and South America. This is a native species. And again, this is a completely different family. Okay, this is a completely different animal, sometimes referred to as the New World pigs. These guys we don't have a problem with. We like them. They're native species, okay? But the wild pigs are non-native that we have. They were first introduced, what we best believe, early to mid 1500s, definitely through Hernando de Soto, some of those earliest records where the earlier explorers are coming to the New World. And if you think about it, the pig is the ideal animal to drop off and leave and expect to still be around when you come back. It's a good food source, very, very hardy type of animal, very low maintenance type of animal, makes it a perfect animal if you're charting a new world. And since that time, though, obviously there's been animals that are brought over to North America for hunting, hunting preserves, various domestic aspects of that as well too. But bottom line is to understand that pigs have been here for quite some time, since the mid 1500s. but they are still considered a non-native species. It's really been over the past 40, maybe 50 years, 30 years, somewhere in there, where we've really had this population explosion in the distribution of these animals. And you'll see shortly when I talk about reproduction, just a normal natural reproduction as well. Over the past 30 or 40 years, okay, and we've got wild pig populations and probably, and again, this varies. We're trying to reduce that. About 37 states or so, 33, somewhere's in there. It kind of varies because there's some states that have small pockets that get eradicated and it'll come off that list. But they're fairly widely distributed in the United States as well as Canada too. For the longest time, Canada never thought they'd had pigs, but they got to start looking at it, and they do have pigs. Okay. So the question becomes over that past 30, 40 years, how fast are they spreading? Okay. Probably the best estimate I can give you of that is about 65 to 70 miles per hour. Okay. The pig problem that we have today is due to a subset, a small subset, a very small subset of hunting population of hunters who like to hunt wild pigs. Okay. And it's through this process of illegal, well, legal now in most states, of live capturing wild pigs, transporting them to a place that doesn't have them, and letting them go. Okay. That's what has caused this national North American spread of wild pigs. Okay. It's that human induced management because these animals are short legs. They don't migrate. They don't disperse very large distances. They're really kind of homebodies. Okay. They've been helped to a new home. Okay. And that has been the root cause of the wild pig problem that we have in North America today. Um, we do have some data. If you look at their range expansion, this is 1982 from the Southeast Cooperative Wildlife Disease Study out of the University of Georgia. The current range of pigs in the United States. Again, this was 40-some years ago. Yeah, we had them down here in Florida, Texas, obviously introduced out into California, and a few pockets here or there up in the Smokies as well. If you move that to 1988, you can see those ranges start to expand a little bit, a few more pockets here and there. Jump up to 2004, you start to see Texas is really filling in, California is starting to fill in, as well as Florida. You start to see a few pockets up in Oregon, a few up here in the Northeast. Uh-oh, something's going on. And then you jump up to 2024, okay, and you can see that range expansion there. And again, pigs are not walking up to northern Michigan. They're not walking up to the Northeast. They're being helped up there, and that is through that act, which in most states now is illegal, of live capturing, transporting, and releasing. Okay, and again, that's for a hunting purpose. There's a small segment of the hunting population that thinks it's a good idea to have wild pigs. Um, this act, again, I say it is illegal in just about every state, and it's very, very difficult to catch. Okay, these folks that do this, they know it's illegal. They know there are significant fines in most cases, but yet they still do it. They have that passion. Okay, and I've never run drugs, never will run drugs, but you can sort of equate it to that clandestine nature of moving these animals to new areas. Okay, very, very difficult to catch at times. Sometimes require undercover work to get this done. Okay, so that's kind of the background as to why we're in this problem. Okay, now once these animals find a new home, they do very, very well because they are what we call or term, I like the term, opportunistic omnivores. Okay, they'll eat just about anything they can get their mouth around. Crops, soft mass, grasses, forbs, tubers, mushrooms, invertebrates, small mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians, small children, no, not small children, that's a joke. Okay, but reptiles, amphibians, and so forth. Okay, and again, if you think about it, this animal is made to survive. They're not a specialist in food. They're really a generalist, a pond generalist, and so they do well in new environments into which they're introduced. Um, other things about this animal, again, there's a lot of myths and exaggerations. Adult weights 100 to 500 pounds. Very rarely you're going to find one 500 pounds. And you'll see, you go back and Google search Hogzilla and all that stuff. Those are rarities, okay? Or a lot of those actually were farm raised animals that had a name like Fred, okay? Uh, but a 200-pound pig in the wild is a big pig. It looks like a 300-pound pig, to be honest with you. But a lot of them are going to be at 40, 50, 100, 150-pound range, somewhere in there. They reach sexual maturity a little, under a year, and can have potentially 1 to 2 litters per year, and they breed year round. Okay. Now think about that in perspective of control and management. White-tailed deer, for example, we generally have a lot of those throughout the southeast and North America. Give birth to 1 to 2 fawns per year, depending on where you are. And now we got an animal that is having 1 to 2 litters of 4 to, let's say, a dozen piglets once to twice a year. Okay, that's alarming in terms of that reproduction. When it comes to management, you really got to giddy up and go, or as I joke to say with a lot of folks, you got to go into it whole hog. And we'll talk about some of the management stuff here shortly. They generally have good survival, and not many animals out there are going to mess with them, even coyotes here. Not so much so, and their home ranges. It can be highly variable depending on whether you're in Texas, or you're down in Florida, or up in the Northeast. But anywhere 4, 5, 6, 7, 800 acres, somewhere in that range would be a typical home range of a wild pig. So they are kind of home bodies. Okay, they have short legs. The density that you'll see out there in wild populations, again, can be highly variable. Some areas that are just being newly impacted, less than a pig per square mile. Some of the other data we've seen in the scientific literature, the extreme cases be over 100 pigs per square mile. That's a lot of pigs, okay? And it can cause a lot of damage. And again, I'll compare that to deer, white-tailed deer, where typically in most, say, southeastern landscapes, you're looking at maybe 20, 25 deer per square mile. Pigs can be much less than that, but they also can be much more than that, okay? And that's partly a function of available resources, but also where you are on that invasion curve, okay? Is this a new population that's just starting, that's fairly low, or have you reached out in capacity and you're seeing a lot of damage? We have quantified agriculture-related damage, crop damage by wild pigs fairly well. Several of my colleagues throughout the country have done excellent jobs in quantifying crop loss due to wild pigs. It's somewhat easier to quantify than other aspects, which you'll see later, of the damage that they cause. The longest time we've been throwing out this crazy number of $1.5 billion per year. Okay, that's probably plus or minus, or probably plus quite a bit more per year. So more refined estimates have come out for 121 million per year on a select group across. My colleague Sophie Key out in Colorado State has done a lot of work with this. A lot of states have done individual estimates, different types of surveys of farmers. Georgia, UGA, close to 100 million per year in agriculture and forestry related damage and mitigation. So there's a lot of good research out there that puts a number on the damage that wild pigs do to agriculture. Okay, so we can somewhat get our finger on that fairly well. We know it's in the millions upon millions per year wherever you have them. Okay, but what we don't have good financial or economic estimates on are all the other things that wild pigs do out there on the landscape. They just don't eat crops. They have a lot of environmental or cause a lot of environmental problems. You can see a few of them here: sedimentation through their rooting behavior, erosion, plant changes in plant communities, nutrient cycling, water quality, which I'll show you some research here on that shortly. and competition with other native wildlife species. And so there's a lot of environmental issues that we're just really starting to understand, better understand and quantify that these animals are causing. In addition to some of the management problems, the typical things that we see: damaged crops, pasture, equipment that is trying to repair some of the damages that pigs do, food plots for a lot of those that are out hunting animals as well. They cause a lot of different types of damage there too. Okay, and so it's more than just pork. They're more than just animals. If you dive deep into the literature of these animals over the past 20, 30 years, you get all different types of names for them. Ecological engineers, which they are. They can shape the trajectory of forests. We've seen good information on that in terms of seed consumption. Their rooting behavior of turning over the soil causes a lot of issues there, potentially some with invasive plant species or facilitating invasive plants. They eat a lot of seeds. Okay, and you think about that hard mass, soft mass for a lot of native wildlife species and so forth. So from the ecological standpoint, there's a lot of issues that this invasive non-native animal poses in North America and in other parts of its range too. Even in the native part of its range in Europe, been to Morocco, seen some of the issues they have there with pigs, as well as in Asia too. Okay. If you just look, and again, I'm pulling some random examples here of some of the damage. If you're in a forested environment, consumption of seedlings, they love roots of longleaf seedlings. Okay, some of the rates of up to 1,000 seedlings per day, or actually really per night, that get depredated. The rooting can uproot plants as well as rubbing on trees. Some other things, again, specific to this behavior when they're searching for food and turning up the soil, as you can see this pig right here is doing, okay, that causes problem. Okay, there's no other animal in North America that can go through an area and it looks like somebody literally got a rototiller and tilled up that soil. Okay, whether it's on a slope or not, or it's close to a wetland area, but that type of rooting behavior can cause significant changes. Usually we quantify them as damages to our natural environment. Okay, whether it's nutrient cycling, erosion, soil compaction, water infiltration, there's all sorts of things that are associated with that rooting behavior. We had a graduate student here, Sarah Bowles, that did some really good work on looking at water quality in wild pigs. Okay, and you think about pigs, they need water, they're going to get that water to cool off. In turn, they'll also be defecating in that water and so forth. And she found through some of her research here in some of her high pig density areas that E. coli levels, and again, this is stuff traced back specific to wild pigs, 40 times higher in watersheds with pigs and way exceeding EPA water standards. Okay. Um, that now becomes not just a farmer issue or a forester issue or a landowner issue. This becomes an everybody issue because that's water quality, water that goes downstream into a reservoir, swimming, drinking, recreating, and so forth. And that becomes a real significant problem. Okay. Good news is though, from some of her research, I found that you start removing pigs, you can improve or reduce E. coli, okay, and fecal coliform concentrations through active management and removing pigs. Again, something we'll talk about here later. Other things as well, and again, these are some of the citations I have at the bottom. This is some of the research we've done here, but there's my colleagues throughout the country doing additional research on this and finding similar things. But I'm just picking a few of them that I'm most familiar with, things that we've done here. Um, their impacts to game animals, wild turkeys, big game bird here in North America, especially the southeast. Been going through some declines there. Well, what's causing that? Well, there's some issues with pigs in terms of competition for space, productivity, and so forth. It's just not a game animal issue. Impact, well, white-tailed deer, another game animal, but also spadefoot, eastern spadefoot. Some really good work that my colleague Steve Ditchkoff did down at Fort Benning, where they did diet analyses of some of the pigs down there, and they're finding a significant number of reptiles and amphibians that these animals consume. Okay, the true larger impact of that we really don't know. Okay, we know we'll have some impact, especially in these ephemeral pools that these animals need to do their breeding in. Okay, um, I mentioned earlier modifiers or ecological engineers. And here in the southeast, we think about from a forested standpoint, but also damage to wetlands too as well. These animals are generally considered seed predators rather than dispersers, for the most part, but they can significantly impact forest regeneration, as can other large herbivores. Say white-tailed deer through their browsing and so forth can impact trajectory of forests when they're at high density, but so too can pigs. Okay. Some of the other work we did earlier just to get some idea of what eats an acorn when you have pigs around. Ariel Fayed did this work several years ago where he had camera traps set up and watching acorns. And here's what we saw. About of all the acorns consumed by animals, pigs consume about 23% of them. White-tailed deer ate a good number and so forth. But they can eat a lot of acorns, whether that gets into forest regeneration or competition with native wildlife species that are dependent upon those pulse food resources. So, a lot of different issues with pigs in terms of damage. Shifting gears a little bit, well, how do you know you have a pig problem? Okay, there will be signs. You can't hide pig damage. Okay, there's no other animal that's going to go and rototill a crop field, a pasture, a forest planting, and so forth. That's usually a telltale sign, if you haven't seen one already, that you have pigs and you have a pig problem. Okay, when they're in an area, it usually in most cases kind of obvious. Okay, you'll see that damage to crops, okay, whether it's trampling or direct consumption, but usually it's that rooting that really catches people's eyes, okay, if they haven't actually seen the animal, to, hey, wait a minute, what's causing this? And then they'll see a lot more of it shortly if they don't do anything about it. But this is typical signs that you have a pig problem, okay, because when you do have one, if you don't do anything about it, chances are you may end up with a lot fairly soon, okay. Um, there are some other examples of why you may have or signs that you may have a pig problem. When the county commission starts putting up these types of signs along the roadways, you probably got a pig problem. Okay. This is actually over in South Carolina. A colleague of mine over there clipped this sign, took a picture of this sign because it's fairly interesting that they actually had to put these up. Some other things that you have a pig problem. If you find pigs with no ears or male pigs with no testicles, you have a pig problem. Okay, meaning that pig was captured before by someone and was released. Okay, in this case, without ears. They usually do that. It's kind of gruesome from a dog training standpoint. Or if they're missing testicles, they have been castrated and let loose to fatten up to be harvested later. Okay, those are signs that you have a pig problem. All right, so keep that in mind because we know that that's going on. As tough as it is to catch those folks doing that and whatnot. The politics of pigs, other things to be thinking about. Banning recreational hunting. Tennessee has taken that step to kind of change the culture of pig management, as well as Missouri on their state lands. I believe Forest Services cooperating with them as well on federal lands. That's been a really good classic example of active management to reduce a nuisance species. Missouri's kind of been the model state, if you will, for other states to examine. Selling pig meat, not a good idea. Creating a market there. Bounty programs have never really ever worked. And again, we've got some good research to indicate that as well too. Um, I'm not going to get too in depth into control, but there are a lot of different options there. Most of the management focuses around lethal removal, killing these animals, okay, in one way, shape, or form, shooting, hunting, and so forth. Non-lethal is fencing, electric fencing, things such as that, depending on the situation, can be very, very effective. But in most cases, most of the management for pigs is centered around using large corral style types of traps. In most cases, not all, is you're going to be your most cost and time effective means for reducing or eradicating pig populations. And again, using a lot of the technology that's out there. There's wonderful game camera technology, trap triggering mechanisms, different types of traps. Again, we're not going to get into that. That can help facilitate that process of removing pigs. Okay, but in most cases, having some type of large corral style trap where pigs are captured, then euthanized, it is going to be your most cost and time effective means for managing pigs. And the question always becomes, well, can you eradicate pigs? And the answer comes back to the typical wildlife biologist. It depends. Okay, it depends on where you are, the landscape structure and composition, movement of pigs, and so forth. But most folks ascribe to a process what we call whole sounder removal. And there's again some good research that we did down at Fort Benning indicate, yeah, this can actually work. Localized eradication. Okay, and it's all based upon the pigs themselves. They are fairly territorial, or they have high site fidelity, really probably be the more accurate term in that. They move across the landscape fairly slowly. Okay. Um, and so, recolonization of areas, because they move fairly slowly, is slow as well. Okay. So if you get rid of them, you can actually be pig free for a while. Okay. But you got to get them all, especially those females or the reproducers in that population. And so, the trapping is one thing, but actually doing it well is another. There's some devils in the details. Use technology, survey the population, who you have out there, unique sounders or groups of pigs by unique individuals, construct your traps, do the removal. Okay, again, get that whole group, family unit, or sounder unit out. Okay, not leaving pigs behind to reproduce, and before too long, you saw through reproduction, you'll be back in the same stage. And then continued monitoring. Okay, and so this is a section of Fort Benning military installation, just southeast here of Auburn, here by about an hour. A study that my colleague Steve Ditchkoff did back in 2008, where they knew through camera surveys where they had pigs on that area, different sounder units throughout the area. They came in, removed a couple, saw what happened. Well, how long did it take them to recolonize that area? Okay, and they really didn't. So they went in and removed some more, went in and removed some more. So they're pig free till the end of the study, which was about, I think, 16 months. Okay, and then study ended, moved off. Okay, so they were able to be pig free at least for 16 months in this scenario. Now, does that work everywhere? No. Okay, because we found out through other follow-up research projects, landscape context, movement corridors will impact your ability to be successful in this. But in some cases, and in a lot, you can be very, very successful at getting localized eradication, but it takes a lot of work. So there are some other new technologies that are being explored and developed when it comes to managing invasive wild pigs. Probably the biggest one that's being talked about and focused on has been toxicants or poisons. And again, this is nothing new. We do it with small mammals. We do it with insects. We do it with weed plants. Get the idea of poisoning things, as being bad kind of out of your head. Just take a step back from that, because we actually do a lot of that, okay, in different contexts. But with wild pigs, we haven't. Okay, that's kind of new. There is one a toxicant called put feral hog bait. That's a warfarin or blood thinning type of active ingredient that is registered for use, or EPA registered, nationally, federally registered. But then both Texas and Oklahoma have registered that for use within their respective states. There's another one that's currently being researched with USDA Wildlife Services, as well as I believe Texas Parks and Wildlife is working with them on that as well. And I think folks in LSU are doing some work with this compound too, as another potential tool in the toolbox. So I'm going to get into this, looking at the warfarin bait. And again, I don't have a lot of time to get into the nuts and bolts. But it's a different approach to using a toxicant. If we think of rat killer as a one shot, one kill, very high concentration, one dose, the developers of the warfarin bait for pigs kind of took a completely different approach, realizing that pigs like to eat. They're kind of greedy guts. Well, if we reduce the concentration to 1/5 of, say, the rat bait, but know that pigs are going to come back for repeated feedings, they'll reach a lethal dose, okay, and go off and die, okay, through internal hemorrhaging is really what it comes down to. And so that reducing the concentration makes this very, 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 very safe for non-target species because they would have to eat a lot of it in one sitting. With all these toxicants, and again, I've got some of the research cited down here, down below, there's a lot of research to back it up, okay? This is not random willy-nilly, hey, let's go out and see if this works. The modern day development of toxicants for about anything, and especially pigs, there's a lot of really good research that goes behind that to understand where some of the complexities are. But if you look at warfarin, there's been a lot of research out there on it back in the late 1950s. Okay, so there was a lot of research out there already. Just now we're tweaking it and applying it to pigs. Okay, so that's one of the toxicants that is currently available in both Texas and Oklahoma for usage. And again, it's not. There's a lot of the devil in the details. It's not a silver bullet. It does you have to follow the regulations, the labeling, the dispensing of the bait, the training of the pigs, and there's a lot that goes into it. So it's not as simple as just throwing out bait, let animals eat it, and you're all done. Okay, there's a very formalized, regulated process for doing that. But it is available from some of the research that we've seen out of Texas a few years ago. It can be very, very effective when properly applied. Okay. The other toxicant, sodium nitrite, this has been in development for several years now. One of the leading groups, the USDA National Wildlife Research Center, a branch of USDA Wildlife Services, has been leading a lot of that research here in the United States. But it's a product that's been used in Australia. But now we're trying to see its application here in the United States. And again, you've got to have good science to back this stuff up. And that's what a lot of these other agencies have been developing. But in and of itself, again, it can be very, 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 very effective means for quickly dispatching pigs. But this also that we found here through some of the research has some non-target issues. Okay, again, this is what USDA has been working to address over the past, well, several years now, 5, 6, 7 years since their first field trial in 2018 to try and address this non-target issue. So hopefully we can have another tool in that toolbox for managing pigs. But it can be very effective. Again, this is a very regulated way of applying it. It's just not people just throwing this stuff out. It's got to be through an approved dispenser at certain times, just overnight, and whatnot. But it's still being developed to try and address those non-target issues. So hopefully this could be technology that we can use in the future, but we don't know. We got to see what the research says and go from there. But we do have some of the sharpest minds, I think, in the world, and especially in the pig world, working on this stuff to try and get this stuff figured out. So, pigs in and of themselves are an important issue in North America as well as other parts of the world. A lot of states have developed state-level task forces made up of a lot of NGOs, a lot of state agencies, federal agencies within those states coming together, talk about how are we going to manage wild pigs. Nationally, a group of professionals, managers, researchers, policymakers, develop the National Wild Pig Task Force, kind of be that consistent voice of the research community. We have a lot of federal, well, not a lot of federal leadership, but good federal leadership through USDA, Wildlife Services, and the Animal Plant Health Inspection Service through the National Feral Swine Damage Management Program. Okay, that came about, well, gosh, 12 years ago. Through a congressional appropriation of about $20 million, because again, we realize this is a big issue. But they really provide a lot of leadership at the federal level, both in research and the management aspect of wild pigs through the year. 2018 Farm Bill, again, more money being put towards wild pig management. Okay, 75 million over 3 years. Looks like, from what I'm seeing, similar funding in the 2026 Farm Bill. Okay, to do that on the ground management, to reduce damage and or localize eradication. Okay, and so the pig issue is quite big. Here in the United States, we're trying to address that. There are some other concerns that we have. Foreign animal diseases, probably one of the big topics right now is African swine fever, and preventing that from getting here in North America. We don't have it here. It's in Europe. Dominican Republic is our closest case of it. So it is fairly close to our doorstep, but trying to keep that out of here. And again, some folks may think, well, that'd be great. The disease that kills pigs. Well, no, it's not. It's a foreign animal disease. And you got to think about it, we have produced a lot of domestic pork. And so should something like that happen, that creates a lot of issues, not just physically controlling it, but also for our livestock markets and our pig products and so forth, the export of that and that whole industry. And so there's a lot of things such as that which are on the horizon or here at the doorstep that folks in the wild pig world are examining and trying to mitigate to the best we can. So that's all I have. I know I breezed through that very, very quickly, but I wanted to make sure that we had time at the end for questions. So I guess, Kayla, I'll turn it over to you if anybody has any questions.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Smith. That was a great talk. I know I learned a lot. And so everyone, for the Q&A or the discussion part, you are muted and I will have to unmute you for you to ask your question. Or you can also feel free to drop your question in the chat and I'll read them. And so if you do have a question, if you just want to use the, if you're unfamiliar with Zoom, there's a little react button down at the bottom and you can raise your hand and I'll call on you. And first we're going to start with the chat. So Steph Courtney says, so perhaps a very basic question, but are there major populations from domestic pigs rewilding in the last century-ish, or mostly from the initial colonizer drop-offs?
Yeah. So, if you look back in our nation's history, there are domestic pigs that we free ranged, okay, up in at least into the 1950s. Some of those escapees are, the some of the pigs that we see nowadays as well. So it was probably, again, you probably have to look at this genetically, that those original pigs that came over, but we've had domestication, and again, changes in pig markets, folks let them go, things such as that. So you see a hodgepodge of why we have pigs on the landscape. But recently, though, that hasn't been that much of an issue. I'm sure that it happens in some cases, uh, uh, but by and large, it's still that movement of pigs from point A to point B, as best we know. And again, we've got some really, really good genetic work on that too. We had a wild pig conference here in April where some of the USDA folks through the National Feral Swine Program, they have a large database of pigs throughout the country to look genetically where these pigs are coming from and how they're being moved across the landscape. It's really fascinating what they can do genetic wise.
Great question, and thank you so much, Dr. Smith, for answering that for us. We do have, again, for anyone that wants to ask a question, just raise your hand and I'll unmute you so that you can ask it or drop it in the chat. We have another question in the chat from Lee Derrick. So why isn't there more effort to expand the use of toxicants across more states?
Well, that's all related to agency regulation. Taking warfarin, for example, that was EPA registered. It's got to get federal approval. Then states have that option of whether or not they want to license it within the state. And so far, at least for warfarin, there's been Oklahoma and Texas. Texas was the first one, and then Oklahoma later. And they had made that decision between the ag folks and the wildlife folks that, hey, yeah, this will be okay for us to do. And that's really what it boils down to: how comfortable they are with that, will apply for their area or not. And so that's a policy decision, and that's a little above my pay grade. And I'm not always versed in the nuances of how those decisions are made. But at least those two states thought it's a good idea, and it seems to be going well there. I haven't heard any issues of that product being used there, and I guess folks are fairly successful and happy with that as well. So why it's not used elsewhere, that really gets boils down to the policymakers within your state as whether or not that tool can be used in the state. And it's very similar elsewhere with anything else.
Okay, we have another question in the chat. So Brett Shepard, who's part of the Southeast team, says how many areas in Southeast Asia have eliminated wild pig species from the wild? Any idea why populations have declined in native ranges, but are almost uncontrollable here in the United States? Seems remarkable for a mammal as opposed to something like an insect or harder to manage species.
Yeah, you get a little. I've had some experience outside. I've been to Japan, did a little bit of work there, and I'm sure they are probably declining in some areas. Uh, but I've also seen parts, at least in Japan, it's a big issue there as well. And for them in that specific area, they don't have a means for lethal removal. Okay, firearms ownership, sport hunting, or recreational hunting is very, very severely restricted there. And so they have explosion of pigs there in the islands of Japan. Yeah, I've seen that issue where I've been in Morocco as well. There it's a native species. It was almost completely eradicated, unfortunately. But they were able to rebuild those populations, and they've reached a point too, and this is 2013, 2014 when we were there, where they had overabundant pig populations, and they want to know how can they do that. And again, their issues as well had been restrictions on firearms, and that they don't have that culture of hunting there. So there's still areas in other parts of the world where they do have abundant or overabundant populations. As to some of the areas where they have been declining, I don't know. I honestly don't know. Maybe local indigenous harvest does excel or exceed production, and they're doing a good job at it. Help us. We got plenty of pigs over here. Come over here. We got plenty of pigs. Teach us how to put those populations on a downward trend. But yeah, for the areas that they may be declining in Southeast Asia, I don't have an answer for you over there.
Great question. And if anybody else has had an experience in that area and they want to drop anything,
Yeah, please chime in.
Yeah, or raise your hand and I'll raise you. And then we do have another question in the chat. So Doug from Minnesota, said, why not develop a harvest for human consumption program? I've heard that wild pigs may have disease concerns, but not seen any evidence of it any more than for domestic pigs.
What's the first part of that, Kayla? I didn't catch that.
Why not develop a harvest for human consumption program? I heard that wild pigs may have disease concerns, but I've not seen any evidence of that more than I have for a domestic pig.
Yeah, so that's a double-edged sword. Well, let me back up on that because I love answering this question. You can eat them; they taste good. I make breakfast sausage, summer sausage, boudin, all sorts of stuff out of wild pigs. Okay, so they can be consumed. They do carry diseases. Okay, so when you are butchering them, processing them, handling them, wear rubber gloves. Okay, swine brucellosis is something that could potentially be transmitted to humans, as well as several other things. So anything time you're dealing with bodily fluids of any wild animal, put gloves on. Okay, you go to the doctor's office, they put gloves on before they take your blood, even with humans, but also human and wildlife. When you're processing, working on these animals, do wear protective equipment. And take all necessary precautions that you would with working with any type of animal when you come into contact with bodily fluids. Outside of that, though, they are good to eat. They don't have as much fat as domestic pig, obviously. Um, the problem with creating a market for a food source, and I mention this as a double-edged sword, in that it sounds great, but then people start farming wild pigs. Okay. And so instead of removing, say, a big female pig or a sow or a whole bunch of piglets, well, let's just let her go and we'll just take the little ones, take them to market and so forth. Okay. Now, there's rendering places, I believe in Oklahoma and Texas as well, where they actually do that. Those are the two states where they actually have the ability where landowners can actually harvest live, okay, and live transport pigs to processing facilities where they are butchered and sold on market. Okay. Now, if you talk with folks from Texas, at least my colleagues in the pig world, they're like, oh, that's not necessarily a good idea. It hasn't really helped us out much. In fact, probably may have hurt the issue some more because, again, people get into farming. I can make money off of farming wild pigs. Why would I ever want to get rid of them? Okay. Now, that wasn't the original thought in Texas. The original thought in Texas, folks are incurring damage. Hey, let's offset some of those damage costs or control costs by allowing them to take them live and for sale. But it hasn't really worked out that well for them. So, yeah, it makes sense to try and do that. But as soon as you monetize something, it people start trying to take advantage of it. And that kind of goes with bounty programs as well. You would think, well, just make it $50 per pigtail and we'll get rid of these pigs. I mean, that's a lot of money. Okay. And we tried that, or at least Fort Benning had tried that. We monitored the results of that and found out a lot of the processors were having folks coming by. Hey, can I buy a pigtail from you? Your pigtails for $25. And then they go and turn them on base for 45, whatever the going rate was. Okay. Again, it becomes a financial incentive to get pigtails. I know at one time I think Mississippi had thought about doing a bounty system. Well, that's fine, but everybody in Alabama, Tennessee, Louisiana, Arkansas are going to be bringing their pigtails to Mississippi, cash in on a bounty. Okay, so you see that there's ways around that people start gaming the system without that end game of getting rid of pigs. So a lot of those, again, we put a lot of thought into that stuff, but it just really hasn't really worked, whether it's for food or bounty programs or whatever it may be. There's a lot of challenges there. It's a human issue then. At that point, it becomes a human issue, human behavior issue, more so than a pig issue.
Absolutely. Doug, do you have any more follow-up or was that good? Let me know if that answered your question. I know down here in the South and in Florida, people hunt for pigs a lot. It's
Oh yeah, yeah.
yeah, people eat them. Yeah, we have pig rib, and it's a very normal part of the culture. But I don't see any other more questions in the chat, and I don't see any hand raised. So I'll ask my question next.
Sure.
Okay. So when using something like I think it was called warfarin,
Mm-hmm.
the toxicant, when it kills the pig, when you're doing those kinds of management strategy, do the managers do you all go out and remove the pig's bodies? Or is it okay if other animals eat their carcass? Do you have to remove their carcass or will it kill the animals that eat it?
Yeah, the research has been done on that. And again, warfarin is an anticoagulant. Okay, so and again, it's in Coumadin. Coumadin would be the over-the-counter blood thinner that folks may use. It's a first-generation anticoagulant, so it breaks down fairly quickly. That's why you've got to take it if you're on Coumadin once a day. Okay, it's not like I take once and I'm good all month. I have to take a little bit each day, get your blood the right consistency. Okay, So that toxin in that product is very, very low concentration. As I mentioned earlier, it's 1/5 the concentration of the typical rat killer bait. So you're already dealing with very, very, very low concentration in a big pig body, and pigs are just a little bit more susceptible to that. So when they get 4 or 5 feedings on that in a row, they usually reach a toxicity level, and then from there it's about probably another 3 or 4 days till that starts working on them to actually kill the animal. And so there's complexities in there. A, finding them, after they moved around. Of course, they don't go that far; they get lethargic. But what they've seen from some of the research is not really an issue because that stuff is already starting to break down as well. And of course, when the pig's dead, the animal's got to get there. They do have what they call a fat soluble dye that's in the bait itself. So if you ever see pictures of a blue pig or pig that when you open it up, it's blue on the inside, like Martians came down and dropped this pig off. That's an indicator that this animal has consumed toxic bait. So for human consumption, no, you don't want to do that for human consumption. And again, that you don't even want to get close to that. Uh, uh, This is our human standards, but even for wildlife standards, it's very low residual effect of this chemical in the animal. So it'd be essentially safe from secondary toxicity based upon animals that may scavenge on a wild pig carcass that's been killed by kaput feral hog bait. But for humans, again, we're ultra conservative on that. That's what that fat soluble dye does. If a hunter harvested this pig, they're processing it, they cut it open, oh my gosh, something's wrong with this pig. It's blue on the. I mean, it can be a very, very vibrant blue. I think it starts as early as 6 to 8 hours after consumption. I mean, it gets in, or definitely within 12, I think, if I recall, that they'll start getting a light shade of blue on the fat. So that's another added safeguard to prevent human consumption. But from the wildlife or non-target species, not really that much of an issue. Now, I think they've seen similar stuff with the sodium nitrate as well.
Very good to know. It's very interesting that those do die. So, thanks for answering that question. I did ask Doug to unmute if you want, Doug, but he had a follow-up about the bounty program. So he said Louisiana's bounty system for nutria might serve as model. Do you have thoughts about that? And I'm not sure, Dr. Smith, if you're familiar, but if not, maybe Doug can talk more about that too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, the first question would be, have they gotten rid of all the nutria in Louisiana?
No, their aim is to harvest about 400,000 per year.
Yeah. And I don't know, maybe it will work in Louisiana. What do y'all require for, or would require for pigs if you had a bounty program?
They require a trapping license within the state
And then how would they receive their bounty per animal
by tail.
by tail? All
Six
right,
$6 per tail.
$6 per tail.
Yep.
Well, that's some. That's a little bit of money.
It all depends upon how many nutria you're able to harvest, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I don't know. Is it working for y'all or?
I have no idea. I just know about it. That's all. I,
Oh,
I've
I
seen
see.
presentations on it.
Minnesota DNR.
Oh,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
Minnesota.
I would want to ask somebody from Louisiana. I mean, have they eradicated nutria yet? I don't think so, but I don't know.
It also seems to me that if people wanted to farm the wild pigs, that they could do that through some kind of permitting system at the state level.
hmm Yeah, and
I
that's a
mean,
whole nother can of worms there in terms of heritage pigs and moving them, and what type of identification do you need, permitting, and all that stuff. Because you do have a lot of folks who raise pigs, okay, for
mhm.
food or for whatnot. So that is an additional challenge as well.
Thank you for your presentation.
Sure, no problem. My pleasure, Doug.
Yeah, thanks for your questions, Doug. It's good to think about, solving the problems of folks farming pigs that they're supposed to bring down to their employee. So we had the same problem with fishes down here, but well, fishermen moving their so yeah, it's always a double-edged sword. I don't see any more questions in the comments. We have about 3 minutes left. Does anybody have any last questions? Or Dr. Smith, do you have any last words of wisdom for us?
No, I mean, it's a big issue, and more we get the word out about it, and do some management, remove these animals off the landscape because they are so darn destructive. And any way we can get rid of them, let's go ahead and do that.
Great. Well, thank you so much for talking to us about this issue today. It was a wonderful presentation, and anybody that might have missed any parts of Dr. Smith's presentation, it will be on our YouTube. So just keep an eye out for it, maybe tomorrow or later this week. I'll try to do as fast as I can. And let's thank Dr. Smith again for giving his time to us. And thank you all for being here. Be sure to check out our website. We have our fall webinar series coming soon. You'll be able to register. So come back and see us in the fall. And thank you again, Dr. Smith. And we'll see you all soon.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for the invite, Kayla.
Of course. All right. Talk soon.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.